People across the country marching, demonstrating, and celebrating Juneteenth today. On this day, back in 1865, the last enslaved Americans were read the Emancipation Proclamation more than 2 years after it was signed, finally learning that they were free. Today, 155 years later, Black Americans and allies are observing this historic day and protesting systemic racism. MSNBC correspondent Garrett Hake is at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And Garrett, looks like a pretty big crowd behind you. What's it like where you are?
Allison, it's been an interesting day, a mix of celebration and demonstration. You know, part celebration around Juneteenth, part protest, part a continuation of the movement we've seen all across the country over the last couple of weeks. Give you a look at what the scene here. This is about a few hundred people who gathered earlier this afternoon at the African American History Museum on the Mall here in Washington, D.C. They marched first to the Lincoln Memorial. They are concluding here. First to the MLK Memorial. They're concluding here outside the Lincoln Memorial. One of several demonstrations across D.C. today. If I could add one other thing about the feel of it, I think this is more of a hometown feel. You know, a lot of these protests are happening in different parts of the city, neighborhoods, places where actual Washingtonians live and work. It doesn't have quite the same feel where people were flooding in from all around the area to take part in the massive demonstrations that we had here after the killing of George Floyd.
Garrett, what are some of those hometown folks? What are some of the people there telling you that they hope will come out of this movement?
Well, it's interesting. You know, it runs in parallel to the Black Lives Matter movement. It grows off of the reaction to the George Floyd death, the killing of Breonna Taylor. But this movement isn't just about police violence. You know, this is about addressing inequities in healthcare, in education, really across the social spectrum. And some of the people I talked to made the point to me that they really want to see, you know, their government, the bigger corporations in this country, dig in on this issue, not just give statements, but really join them in the fight. I think this woman really captured this idea the best. Take a listen.
I need to know, are you really in it? Can you really handle it? Are you going to say what you're going to do and mean it? Are you really for Black Lives Matter? Are you really for equity and inclusion? Stop saying American is one race when we are all races. All of us fall under American, which means my skin and your skin should be equal.
So, Allison, there it is, the connective tissue back to the protests that we saw over the last several weeks, back really to the start of this civil rights movement, you know, in a major way in the 1960s. This is all connected. And the folks I'm talking to want to make sure that there's not protest fatigue, that there's not a drop-off in attention being paid to the issues that affect Black people in America. They want this to stay front and center in the national conversation.
Absolutely. Garrett Hake in Washington, D.C., thank you so much.
You bet.
This morning, a giant Black Lives Matter mural appeared on the streets of Atlanta. The yellow lettering on the Atlanta Beltline painted overnight. It's similar to murals in Washington, D.C., Charlotte, and Seattle. Today in Atlanta, the two officers charged in Rayshard Brooks' killing had their first court hearings. NBC News correspondent Katie Beck is outside the courthouse in Atlanta with the very latest.
Well, Allison, we were expecting to see former Officer Garrett Rolfe and his attorneys appear at least by video conference today in court for the first court appearance, but they both waived their right to appear today, the judge saying that neither of them would be coming to court in person or by video conference, and that because of the severity of these charges, he was not in a position to grant Rolfe bond. So Rolfe will remain in custody. The judge indicated that he did expect his legal team to present some kind of motion for a hearing or some type of motion to get a bond for his client. But the judge said simply at this time, because of the severity of these charges, he is not in a position to do that. Now, moving forward, Rolfe will be detained at the Gwinnett County Jail. He was formerly at the Fulton County Jail, but apparently there were some security issues last night, and Rolfe was moved to a county outside of the city of Atlanta, I think for safety reasons. So as this case moves forward, we've been told the grand jury won't see this case until the fall. We do expect to see some type of legal action on Rolfe's side, but just not today. Allison?
There are Juneteenth events and rallies in all 5 boroughs of New York City today. That's where we find NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis. And Rahima, where are you and what's going on there?
I am in Brooklyn, right across from the famous Brooklyn Library here at the Circle. And we got a crowd of people, and it's a celebration, Allison. They're out here to celebrate Juneteenth and to make a little history while they're also celebrating history. And there have been speeches, there have been drummers, there are bikers who are riders for freedom. There are people who say that they're out here because, while there is a very diverse crowd, they have a common goal, and that is about bringing awareness to people, making certain that the things that people have been talking about for the last 3 weeks or so, since the death of George Floyd, that they do not go away. And also to remember that this day is a day of freedom for African Americans who were slaves. It's a diverse crowd with some common goals, as I say. Listen to what a couple of people told us about why they are here.
I want to teach them the history behind it all and why the world is the way it is today. So hopefully they can make a change when it's their turn, you know?
I came out because as white people, I think it's imperative for us to understand our role in white supremacy and anti-Black racism, and to teach my children that we are out protesting, that there are injustices against Black people that we need to recognize, and that we have privilege in so many ways in this society, and we need to work actively to dismantle systems of white supremacy.
One of the things that the governor has done today is that a couple of days ago, he signed an executive order making today a paid holiday for state workers. And Governor Cuomo says that he intends to present legislation next year to make Juneteenth a state holiday for all workers. Allison?
Rahima, we heard as well this morning, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announcing Juneteenth will be an official city holiday?
Absolutely. And so between the mayor and the governor, it seems like they are on the same page on all of this. And the mayor also went so far as to say if it's a city holiday, it's going to be a school holiday as well. The recognition of this is something that's extremely important. As you hear a choir going on behind me as part of the celebration that's going on out here. But one thing that we've heard a lot from people is that they want to make certain that the action that's out in the streets is followed up by action at the polls. We were at a location just a short distance from here at the Brooklyn Museum, which is a polling place, and it's open today. As New York's primary is coming up, and they want to have people make certain that they have an opportunity to vote as early as they would like to. Allison?
Rahima, it's a message we've been hearing throughout the day today, that people want to make sure this momentum, this passion carries forward. Rahima Ellis in Brooklyn, thank you so much. Tulsa, Oklahoma, the center of a national conversation about the justice system's failure to protect Black Americans. Dateline's Craig Melvin has the story of two Tulsa brothers who were wrongfully convicted and spent decades in prison.
Corey Atchison has been in prison for 28 years for a murder he swears he did not commit. He says he has spent almost every day of it trying to prove his innocence.
Was there a point over the last 20-plus years where you thought, I'm gonna die here?
Times when you get denied in court, you feel low. You just want to say give sometimes.
Corey's daughter, Courtney, was born a couple of months after her father started his life sentence.
It felt like I was failing her. And it felt like it wasn't even my fault.
A 2017 study of the National Exoneration Registry shows that innocent Black people are 7 times more likely to be convicted of murder than innocent white people. Tulsa defense lawyer Joe Norwood was convinced Corey was one of them. He tracked down a man who said police threatened him with jail time when he was 15 years old if he didn't say Corey was the shooter.
Partway through his testimony, he goes, "What I just testified to isn't the truth. I was told to say it by these detectives. I didn't see Corey do anything."
While Corey languished in prison, another North Tulsa man named Malcolm Scott had insisted for more than 20 years that he, too, had been convicted of murder based on coerced testimony. Unbelievably, Malcolm was Corey's younger brother.
Did you know that your brother told us that he feels partly responsible for you going to prison?
I mean, there's no blame on my brother at all. And I definitely can't hold him responsible for something that I didn't even do myself.
Tulsa police denied they coerced any witnesses, but when witnesses against Malcolm also recanted, it was time for both brothers to have another day in court.
We basically had made that a pact with each other. We said, man, whoever get out of here first, you better come get the other one.
You can watch the whole story tonight on Dateline at 10 p.m. Eastern on NBC and on NBC News Now this weekend. The mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma, imposing a curfew ahead of President Trump's campaign rally tomorrow. The city is concerned about potential issues between Trump supporters and protesters and, of course, the coronavirus. NBC News correspondent Morgan Radford joining us now from Tulsa. Morgan, Trump supporters have been lined up for days now to get into tomorrow's rally. What are people in Tulsa saying about it?
Well, right now, Allison, we're standing in the historic Greenwood district, and you can see behind me, this is part of the Juneteenth celebration that's been going on. And this was planned, of course, before the president was intended to come. But this is a day that they are celebrating the freedom of those final slaves in Galveston, Texas, and neighboring Texas. But it also comes on the heels of them honoring the legacy of that Tulsa race massacre that happened back in 1921. We had 300 black people in this city die, 800 were hurt, and 8,000 people were left homeless when a series of white looters came into this area and tried to destroy it. This is the heart of black life here. So historically, this is where they called it kind of the Black Wall Street. You had more than 30 blocks of movie theaters and bustling businesses and a place for black people to convene. And that's why these people are having fellowship here now. But not far from their minds is the fact that the president is on his way, something that some residents have described as a slap in the face. Take a listen.
Explain to us, how do you feel about the president's visit? How do you feel about the timing? And what message do you receive?
Well, first, again, as you stated, it's a slap in the face to the black community, the history of what happened back in 1921, the race massacre. Here, you're on holy ground. A lot of people died. Men, women, children, burned. White mobs, Sinclair Oil, dropped bombs on businesses, on homes, churches. And for the president or his staff or whoever to plan or schedule a rally on a day that we celebrate freedom, and being the 99th year of the race massacre, it's a disgrace. It's beyond bitter. It's hurtful, and a lot of the businesses are very disappointed in his decision making to have a rally right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which a lot of people don't know that let's call it what it is. This is a racist state, and we've dealt with that. I'm from here. I was raised on Greenwood. I first heard about the massacre when I was 9.5 years old.
But you still feel like there's a race problem today?
Oh, yeah, it's big time. You know, a lot of things down here in Tulsa, Oklahoma is whitewashed. We don't get the fair treatment. There's a lot of redlining down here. I mean, look at what we have left of Black Wall Street. This was Greenwood Historic District. And so it's an insult. This highway here was deliberately put here to divide the community, to push the black community out of Greenwood.
You heard Mr. Harris talk about those disparities that he feels still exist. Well, they're also supported numerically, because if you look at unemployment, black residents here in Tulsa have twice the rate of unemployment. And when you look at black poverty, it stands at a rate at 34% here compared to 13% for white Tulsa residents. Allison.
Morgan, I know there are also health concerns here as well, and not only that this event was originally scheduled to be on Juneteenth, but also that it's happening in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic, a pandemic that we have discussed many times is disproportionately affecting black Americans.
That's right. I mean, and so the reality of it is the city has tried to do some things to make sure the residents can stay safe. They've blocked off certain streets, certain areas of the city around the Box Center where that Trump rally will be held. But also, when it comes to the fact that people here, they're saying, are we really safe, right? There was supposed to be a curfew that was set originally for 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The president just tweeted within the last hour saying that the mayor of Tulsa spoke to him and said that there will not be a curfew for the people attending his rally. So there's still questions in the air as coronavirus cases continue to surge. I mean, this area has seen the highest spike consecutively in terms of days in recent days. So that's definitely something that's on everyone's minds here. Allison?
Morgan Radford in Tulsa, Oklahoma, thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.